Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Punisher. This is a Mar Tech 1 combat frigate. Punisher is the only Tech 1 frigate with only 2 medium slots, and in general it's one of a very few frigates with only 2 medium slots. You can only think of Slicer, I guess, with another ship with 2 medium slots. And in general, when you see 2 medium slots, you think about kiting because you really need a web, which means 3 medium slots for any scrum or web range shenanigans. But the problem for Punisher is that this ship really does not have any bonuses that encourage kiting, like Slicer. So it usually has to brawl, and when the problem is you have a brawling ship that cannot control your opponents, and this is not a good combination for solo PvP. It's still used quite a lot, but in many situations Punishers will be just a bait for fleet and not the actual solo ship, because this is one of a few, if not the only, probably even the only Tech 1 frigate that can fit sufficient tank to survive as a bait. All our Tech 1 frigates in scrum range will probably die before your fleet can arrive. So you need to be aware of it when you engage Punishers. Punisher is still, I would say, the best Tech 1 frigate for fleets, because you can compensate for the lack of control with specialized roles in the fleet. But for solo PvP, you obviously have to do everything yourself, and Punisher cannot really do everything at the same time. So 4 to 5 slot layout, I already talked about 2 medium slots. You can see a lot of similarities with a Slicer. Slicer also has 2 medium slots and 5 low slots. But bonuses for Punisher do not encourage kiting at all. You don't have a bonus to optimal range, and you don't have bonus to damage. In fact, Punisher does not have any DPS bonuses for energy weapons, so you are free to fit anything you like in high slots. And as statistics show, many people fit autocannons as the main choice, which makes sense because autocannons leave a lot of power grid and CPU available for tank, and they are the least vulnerable weapon type for signature tanking at close range or for scrum kiting, because they can adapt with various types of ammo. When you see pulses, about 20%, when beams, about 20%, and then everything else. Of course, when you feed any weapon, you need to think about the potential counters. For example, when you feed beams, probably anything that just clicks orbit 500 with an afterburner will just kill you, because you will not be able to apply. And similarly, both pulses and beams will be extremely vulnerable to neuting. Again, anything that clicks orbit 500 with a neut will probably kill you, and so on and so forth. Because Punisher has no control, your opponents can do whatever they like with you. Another problem that hurts win rates quite a lot is that since you don't have a control, your opponents are generally free to leave anytime they want. Especially scrum kiters, web kiters that are not hard committed, they can just lane out and leave. That said, the tank and DPS of a Punisher is still very respectable. So if you actually want to get a kill, you still need to probably mitigate in some way. Either mitigate with signature, or mitigate with range, or mitigate with electronic warfare. Not many ships can just straight out beat a Punisher in a straight DPS race with zero mitigation. Okay, let's look at the most popular feats for Punisher now. Alright, so we will start with rolling feats, and I will show you some of meta kiting feats as well. As I mentioned, there are a lot of various combinations that you can do with the Brawling Punisher because you have so much flexibility. I will only show you, I think, the most universal feat with autocannons. So the idea is pretty simple. You have Macro Warp Drive and Warp Scrambler. It gives you some mobility in case you will be kited. You're not just that strictly hard countered by web kiters or kiters. And it will also give you some chance of overheating your Warp Scrum and maybe getting a cycle of Macro Warp Drive when your opponent drops a Scrum and kind of closing the distance again against some Scrum kiters. The autocannons, as I mentioned before, free up a lot of CPU and power grid, and then you just fill up with tank in low slots. So as a result, you get quite competitive tank and DPS, as you can see. 10k effective hit points before ancillary rep and 200 DPS, and I think this is with highest damage ammo. So it's quite good. If anyone just wants to get a straight DPS race, they will have to work for it. Because majority of Tech 1 frigates will probably have just half of this number of hit points. Punisher also was kind of indirectly buffed by the rebalance of tree marks. Tree marks used to give penalty for top speed, and not anymore. Yeah, now we give penalty to agility, which is not as critical. So now Punisher can actually go slightly faster than before, which is a big deal. It's more important when losing some on agility. Okay, and you can also try to make it essentially a slicer out of Punisher. This is a very off-meta choice. The big advantage is that people will not expect it. So if you sit inside complexes, people will happily slide into you in afterburning frigates. And in a slicer, you are never going to get this. And when you just need to kind of battle with your ship and actually get a kill. There are two ways. The more popular one is the pulse one. I personally like beams a bit more, but I guess it's down to personal preference. I never really tested kiting punishers, so I will just give you both of these feats. The pulse one, the big advantage is that your tracking is decent. The big disadvantage is that your range is horrible. Because on Punisher you don't have a bonus to optimal range, unlike on Slicer. So you can't really extend Scorch Kiting to 24 kilometers. You will be limited to 17. Well, maybe if you pop off Frantics, you will get like 18 maybe. 18 and a half. Which will still force you to operate much closer when on a Slicer. So the rest is essentially a slicer fit. Beams, pretty much the same as slicer again. You get higher damage, but worse tracking. So a bit more flexibility, but you will need to pilot it a bit better. But other than that, it's essentially the same as a slicer. And similarly to slicer, you will need to watch your cap quite closely. I think the situation with cap on Punisher is a bit better than on slicer, but regardless, it's still pretty bad. So you can't really tank while you tackle and shoot your target. This is more of a repair while you are repositioning essentially. And tank is also practically non-existent. Okay, so these are the main Punisher feats. I think this ship overall is quite usable, especially if you want to go a bit of meta. But overall, the engagement profile I feel is not the best compared to many other Tick 1 frigates. But you can get something out of it. Okay. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next ship reviews.